Hi there, my name is Anastasia Brown, and today I will be recording a science lesson for my ITL 518 Science Integration class. And the lesson is going to be on sinking versus floating, and it will be designed for a kindergarten class. So the learning goal will be for students to learn the vocabulary terms sink and float and to learn the difference between them. And they will also be split up into small groups to test different items and objects to see if they sink or float. So how I would begin the lesson is I would have students in front of me on the carpet as part of large group instruction, and I would say, okay, my friends, today we will learn about sinking and floating. I will split you up into small groups with your friends, and you will get to test different kinds of items to see if they sink or float. So first, to start out with, I would ask my friends if they know of any examples of sinking or floating. So I would say, could somebody raise their hand and give me an example of an object that sinks? And then I would let students have the time to contribute, and I would write the answers on the whiteboard so that we can keep track of the different ideas that we come up with. And then I would do the same thing for float. So I would ask students, does anybody know of objects that float? And we would do the same. I would give everybody a chance to contribute, and we would write them on the board to keep track of them. And then to engage students before we do our group activity, I would read a book about sinking and floating. So the book I chose is called What Floats and What Sinks by Jennifer Boothroyd. And so I researched this book, and it's an age-appropriate book. It's for ages 4 to 6. So, and it's engaging. It has lots of pictures to illustrate the idea of sink and float. So we will read that all together, and I will stop to show students pictures, and I will ask questions, and we will have discussions about the book and about the different items that sink and float. So then once we are done with that, I will tell students that they will get to test out their objects to see if they sink or float. So students will be split up into groups, and each group at their table will have a bucket or bowl filled with water, and they will have different objects that they will get to test out. Like I have here a little floating fish, I have a flower, I have a paper clip, I have a ping pong ball, and I have a pen. So each group will have their own items. They will all be the same items. And then they will also have a worksheet that will look something like this. And so I made this one up with these items, but I would most likely either find one online or print one, make it up myself, but print it. So then this has all the items, and so to begin with, I would tell the students that we would do one together as a class. So we would test out one item. So we would start off with the first one on our list, which would be a ping pong ball. So I would tell students, okay, my friends, I'm going to show you how to do this. So when you go into your groups, you'll know what to do. So this would be the part where I model and do the direct instruction so that students know what to do. So I will tell them, okay, so first, before we begin, we will make a prediction. So I would like you to tell me if you think that this ping pong ball will sink or float. So I would have students, I would say, put your hand on your head if you think it's going to sink, and raise your hand if you think it's going to float. So then students would do that, and then I would say, all right, let's test it out and see. So I would also model how to put the item in there gently and carefully so we avoid splashing. So we put that in. I know it's kind of hard to see, but the ball is in there. And I would say, okay, my friends, what do you think? Is it sinking or is it floating? And they would say what their answer is. I'm hoping to see float. So I will say, great job, my friends. All right, so now you'll get to try this on your own. So then this is the part where I would split up students into groups. So the way that I would have the classroom set up is they would already be split up into table groups. So I would most likely just tell them to go to their tables and begin working with their groups. But if I want to do ability grouping, or maybe just kind of mix it up and let them have a chance to work with different students, I could randomly number them off by 1 through 4, and then have them go into those groups. So in this case, I would just say, okay, my friends, you're going to go work with your table groups, and they will go down the list, and they would test out each object to see if it sinks and floats, and then I would tell them, so for example, with our ping pong ball, it floats, so we would put a check mark, and I would also model how to do that before they go back to their seats. So I would put a check mark by float, and this is what I would expect them to do as well when they're completing their worksheets for each item. So for example, if it sinks, they would put a check mark here. If it floats, they would put a check mark where it floats. Okay, so then this is the time that students will be working in groups, and this is where I would do my informal assessment. So I would walk around the classroom, and I would observe each group to see if they're understanding the concept, if they're trying to test out their objects, and then I would look at their worksheet to make sure that they're completing it correctly, and I would give any guidance or support that students may need at this time. And then, so once they are done, we will come back as a large group, and we will test out these items all together too. So this is where they would check, where I would check for their understanding. They would also get to check their work. So we already did the ping pong ball, so we go down the list. Next we would do our fish toy. So we would put that in water, and I would tell my students, okay, my friends, what did you get? Did you say it sinks or did you say it floats? And different groups would say what they got, and then we would try it out together, and we would see that it floats, and I would say, okay, so who got floats, who got sinks? And then we would talk about it, talk about the different answers. So we would do that for each item as we go through the list, test out each item. And then I would also take this time to really define those words. So I would ask students, okay, who knows what sink means? And who knows what float means? And I would give them time to define each one. Some students may already know just based on this activity or maybe prior knowledge that they've had. So then I would also provide the definition for them. So I would either have it written on the whiteboard or on an anchor chart, but the definition that I would give would be: sink is the action of an object when it becomes submerged in a liquid, and float is the action of an object when it sits on the surface of a liquid. So as we are testing out these items, I would also point it out. So for example, this fish that we did, so this one is floating because it's sitting on top of the surface of the liquid. It's not going all the way down to the bottom. So for example, let's try our paper clip. So when we put that in, it goes all the way to the bottom. So then I would emphasize that that means that it sinks because it went all the way to the bottom of the liquid. Okay, so then also these the words will be defined, and they will be on the board or on an anchor chart for the students to refer to as they are doing this lesson. Okay, so then what we will do is to introduce a higher order thinking question. I would introduce students to the word buoyancy. So I would start off by saying, okay, my friends, who knows what the word buoyancy means? And since they're in kindergarten, I'm thinking that a lot of them may not, but I'm hoping that they will at least make some kind of connection that it has something to do with sinking or floating, since that's what we've been doing. So then I will tell them that they will get to write this word in their science journals, and I will give them the time to do that. And then as part of their homework, I would like them to take home the science journals and talk to their families, their moms and dads or brothers and sisters, about what the word buoyancy means, and jot down some ideas for what it may mean. And then once they come back the next day, we will talk about the word buoyancy and tie it into our lesson. And we will talk about how buoyancy means an object that floats in liquid. So for example, a beach ball is dense, so we'll talk about density, bring that in, and it floats in water, as opposed to a marble, which is gonna sink. And then hopefully students will make the connection that some of our lighter items, more dense items, are the ones that float, and then some of the heavier items are the ones that sink. All right, so let's see. I just want to make sure that I covered everything. And okay, so thank you for watching, and I can't wait to do this lesson as part of my future classroom.